After spending at least 3 hours hanging out with my sister's friend Ella, I was finally leaving. I had really enjoyed my time with Ella and didn't really want to leave. Unfortunately, my parents had arrived home from work and wanted me back home in time for dinner. I said my final goodbyes to Ella before beginning the short 5-minute walk home. As I walked, I thought about my time with Ella. I knew that the chances of speaking to her again when back in my body were slim, but I still had hope that she might agree to go out with me. As I neared my house, I refocused my thoughts, thinking about how I should act around my parents while in Sarah's body. I walked up my driveway and opened our front door. I was glad to see that my parents weren't in the hallway, as I still didn't really know how I would act around them. I took off my shoes and walked to my sister's room where I was going to be sleeping for the night. I put my handbag on the bed and started unpacking my things. As I was finishing putting everything away, I heard my mom walk up to my door and start knocking. "Hi, Sarah. Earlier today, your dad received a promotion at the lab. In 20 minutes, we're going out to a nice restaurant to celebrate. Please change into something nice," said my mom, speaking through my door. "Oh, that's great news. I'll find something nice to wear," I said back, pretending to be happier than I actually was. As my mom walked away, I laid down on my bed in frustration. Why did Dad have to get a promotion on the one day I'm in my sister's body? I whined. I sat back up and went to have a look through my sister's closet, wondering what would be appropriate to wear while at a fancy restaurant. I quickly realized that my sister had very few clothes that could be considered appropriate in a formal setting. Most showed either too much skin or had something inappropriate written on it. I eventually was able to find a nice gray dress that I thought would be alright. It went down to just above my knees and only showed the top of my chest. I took it out of my closet and put it on my bed while I looked for a pair of shoes to wear. I quickly found a pair of gray trainers that I thought went well with the dress I had picked out. I took them out of the closet and put them on. I then moved onto the dress, stepping into it and pulling it up my body. I was really surprised by how nice the dress felt on me. None of my male clothes were nearly this comfortable. The soft material felt incredible as it hugged my curvy body. I finished putting the dress on by pulling the straps over my shoulders. I walked over to the mirror to see how I looked. I was surprised by how good the dress looked on me. I smiled to myself, knowing I was doing a good job acting as my sister. I spent a few minutes looking at myself while wondering what Alex was doing in Reno. After a few minutes, I heard my mom call to me saying we were leaving. I picked up my phone and handbag before leaving my room and walking into the hallway. I was instantly greeted by my mom. "Oh, Sarah, you look gorgeous in that dress. I wish you wore things like that more often," my mom said to me, smiling. "Thanks, Mom. I think it looks nice on me," I said back to her while touching the dress. My mom and I then walked out of the house to our car, where my dad was already waiting. We both got into the car, my mom in the front seat, me in the back seat. We then started driving to the restaurant. The drive to the restaurant was pretty uneventful. My mom and dad spent most of the time talking to one another. At one point, they mentioned it was sad that Alex couldn't come. Little did they know. Eventually, we arrived at the restaurant. We all walked in and sat down at a table together. As I sat down, I spotted an older guy looking over at me. I was a bit creeped out and tried to ignore it. I was also glad that Alex had taught me to close my legs when I sat down in a dress. Things could have been bad if he didn't. The dinner was pretty enjoyable. I enjoyed talking to my parents about random things. They also couldn't tell that I wasn't Sarah, which was good. Eventually, we finished our food and left the restaurant. It was now pretty late at night, and I was looking forward to getting home and going to sleep. After arriving home, I said goodnight to my mom and dad and walked to my sister's room, closing the door behind me. I started undressing and preparing for bed. I stripped down to my bra and panties before sliding into what was to be my bed for the night. I quickly realized that my sister's bed was much comfier than my own. "I could get used to this bed," I said out loud to myself. Something I didn't think I could ever get used to was my large chest, especially when trying to sleep. When I was in my own body, I tended to sleep on my front, but I no longer could after the swap with my sister. Eventually, I was able to find a comfy sleeping position, and I drifted off to sleep. Waking up the next morning was an interesting experience. I had completely forgotten about what had happened the previous day and started panicking when I saw my body and where I had woken up. After that, I quickly remembered what had happened, though, and got out of bed to begin my morning. I thought back to the previous day, remembering that Alex had given me a list of things I had to do once I woke up. I found the list on the desk and started reading through what Alex wanted me to do. Have a shower, put on makeup, and do my hair were just a few of the things on the comically long list. I shook my head, not wanting to do anything on the list, but knowing my sister would not be happy if I ignored it. I eventually decided I might as well try and complete the list. I had nothing to do anyway. I walked out of my room to the bathroom where the shower was. I removed the rest of what I was wearing and got into the shower, starting it up as I entered. I tried my best to clean myself while not looking at myself. I was still pretty uncomfortable being in my sister's body. Once I left the shower, I dried myself and started looking for something to wear. Knowing Alex would be back today, I knew I had to wear something my sister would pick. I picked out a light pink crop top, which I paired with some jean shorts. The clothes looked comfortable, and I had seen my sister wear them before, so I knew she would like me wearing them. Once I was dressed, it was time to try and work out how to style my messy hair. Being a guy, I had always had short hair and was therefore unsure of how to style longer hair. I looked up a tutorial on YouTube showing how to put longer hair into a bun. I followed the tutorial, trying my best to do it well. In the end, the result wasn't perfect, but it certainly wasn't bad. I was pretty proud of myself. While I was still at my sister's desk, I decided to try putting on makeup. Remembering my sister's quick tutorial, I applied some basic makeup in her style. In the end, I thought it looked really good, just like how my sister would have done it. I went and sat down on my bed and started looking through my sister's phone. I saw on one of Alex's friends' Instagram story that they were heading back to San Francisco after their Reno trip. I smiled to myself, knowing I would soon be back in my own body. Thank God this is nearly over, I said to myself. I spent a few hours scrolling through Instagram, trying to waste time while I waited for Alex to get back home. All of a sudden, I heard both of my parents rush out of the house and get in our car, leaving without saying anything to me. I was pretty confused by it all, but figured it was nothing important. That was until I received a phone call from my mom. I answered without thinking much of it. What my mom said to me next, though, I will never forget. Sarah, Alex and a few other people have gotten into a really bad car crash. The nurse who called us told us he is in critical condition. We're driving to the hospital to see him. We will keep you updated, my mom said to me while crying. I didn't even have time to respond, as my mom had already hung up the phone. I sat on my bed in shock, unsure of what to do. My heart was racing as I thought about everything. If Alex was injured, what would that mean for our body swap? I thought to myself, holding back tears. What would happen if the injuries are so bad Alex dies? I continued to think to myself, would I be trapped in this body forever? I couldn't bear to think about it. I decided to go for a walk to try and clear my mind. I couldn't deal with the stress. I left my house and started walking, ignoring the rain that was falling down on me. I had probably been walking for half an hour when I felt my phone vibrate in my jean shorts pocket. Hoping for the best, I pulled my phone from my pocket and looked at the text I had just received from my mom. The hope I had was immediately shattered as I read what I'd been sent. Alex has just passed away. We were with him when it happened. We will be home later tonight. Read the text. I collapsed on the pavement, crying harder than I ever had before. After a few minutes on the pavement, I stood up and started walking back to my house. Luckily, I had walked in a circle and was fairly close to my house. I walked the short distance, entered the house, went to my room, and collapsed on the bed. I was lying on my bed for probably a few hours before I heard the front door click open. I sat up, wondering if my parents had finally come home. I walked up to my door and opened it, looking into our hallway. I was able to see my mom and dad, saying nothing. I walked up to them both and hugged them. After what felt like the longest hug ever, my mom finally said something. "How are you holding up, Sarah?" she said sadly. "I'm all right, I guess. I don't even know what to say," I said back. A few seconds later, my mom responded, "That's okay. I'm gonna go to my room for some alone time." Without saying another word, my mom walked to her and Dad's room, leaving me and Dad alone. "Hey, Dad. I need to talk to you about something. It's really important. I said, turning back to my dad. Oh, all right then, let's go to the kitchen, he responded. With my dad behind me, I walked into our kitchen and sat at one of the bench stalls. My dad sat on the one next to me, and I started to tell him everything. Starting from the beginning, I told him that I was actually Alex. I told him about Sarah's blackmail. I told him that she had wanted me to pretend to be here, and I even told him we had used his machine without permission. My dad didn't say much. He mostly listened, only speaking up to clarify small details. Once I had finished telling him everything, I sat back in the chair, relieved that someone now knew what happened. I looked up, waiting for my dad's response. Eventually it came, and I listened intently. I don't know what to say, Alex. The machine only works when the people swapping are alive, and with Sarah now gone, you won't be able to become yourself ever again, he said, looking at me sadly. I had a feeling that would be the case, I said back. Well, what do you want to do now? You really only have two options, stay like that in Sarah's body or find someone who is willing to swap with you, my dad said to me, causing me to think for a few seconds. I eventually responded, I think I would rather stay like this. I don't really want to go through the process of finding a guy to swap with. I doubt any of them would even want to become a girl anyway. That's fair enough, so I guess you're now Sarah, my dad said, looking at me. While I wasn't happy about it, I accepted that I was now Sarah. Can we keep this a secret between us two, though? I don't want Mom to know about what really happened, I said once again, looking at my dad. I guess that's possible, but you realize if you don't want Mom to find out, you have to live and act how Sarah would have, he responded. I was about to say something back when my dad started speaking again. Actually, I have an idea. At my lab, we recently finished a machine that allows the user to completely alter the way they think. If you want me to not tell Mom, you have to let me change a few things about you, my dad said once again. I was slightly taken aback by what he had said, and naturally had a few questions. What do you mean it changes the way people think? Are you trying to replace my brain with Sarah's or something? I asked back, concerned. No, it's not like that. What I mean is it can change certain characteristics about a person, so that person starts acting a certain way. For example, it could change someone from liking girls to boys, said my dad calmly. While I was still slightly concerned, I asked Dad a few more questions about the machine. Dad explained how the machine worked, which calmed me down, and eventually ended up with me agreeing to have the machine used on me. So you promise, once the machine is used on me, you won't tell anyone that I'm not really Sarah, not even Mom, I said to my dad, looking him in the eye. He told me he promised, and I trusted him. So, when can we use the machine? I asked. My dad quickly responded, telling me he already had one with him. Apparently, he was allowed to bring one home after being promoted. He walked over to his work bag and pulled out a small blue machine. He walked over to the bench with it and placed it down. All right, all you have to do is put your fingerprint here, and then I will do the rest. I nervously lowered my finger onto the scanner until I heard the beep confirming my print had been scanned successfully. My dad then started pressing things on the screen. I just sat back down on the chair and waited for him to be done. A few minutes later, he pressed the start button, and I felt a weird tingling sensation. It wasn't nearly as bad as the body swap tingling, but it still felt weird. Eventually, my dad looked over at me and told me everything was done. So, what did you change? I asked my dad. Just a few things to make you act more like how Sarah would. You should now be attracted to boys, like girly things, and you should also now feel more comfortable in that body, as it is now technically yours, said my dad. While I didn't really feel any different yet, I trusted that my dad's machine worked, and what he said would happen, would now happen. Thanks, Dad, I said nervously, looking down. I'm going to go and have a rest in my room now. I finished. That's okay, Sarah. Let me know if you need anything else, he said back. I then walked off to my room to lie down on what was now my bed. After lying down, I pulled out my phone and started looking through Instagram, trying to take my mind off what happened earlier. As I scrolled, I realized that I was no longer checking out my sister's friends. I was instead looking at their clothes, makeup, and boyfriends. Wow, that machine really did work, I quietly said to myself. After a while, I drifted off to sleep. tired from an intense day. This all happened around 5 years ago. I've been living as Sarah ever since. At first, it was hard adjusting into my sister's world. I had to learn so many new things and meet so many new people. I really enjoyed it, though. I've really learned to love my life as Sarah, and while I do every so often think about my old life as Alex, I don't think I would ever go back. In the 5 years since the incident, I got a job with the biggest fashion brand in the country as a model. I now regularly show off new clothes walking down the catwalk at fashion shows, earning good money as I go. I'm also now happily dating my boyfriend Jack. We've been together for 2 years so far, and he means the world to me. Being trapped in my sister's body turned out way better than I ever thought it would.